Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of Generation GC Wondering from The Young and the Hopeless. My name is Molly Hudelson, and I am your host. Last week, we talked about The Click from Good Charlotte. Next week, we'll be back talking about a song from the Chronicles of Life and Death. My guest this week is Jesse Cannon. Jesse is a record producer and the owner of Cannon Found Soundation. He's made records with a lot of bands you probably know and love. To name just a few, The Cure, The Menzingers, The Misfits, Basement, Limp Bizkit, Somos, Men Overboard, Transit, Lifetime, Saves the Day, Real Friends, and so many more. Just go on his website. Jesse is also the author of Processing Creativity and Get More Fans, the DIY guide to the new music business, and he also has a YouTube channel where he teaches musicians how to promote their music, and we are going to hear about all of those things on the show today. Jesse is also a podcast host and producer. He hosts Noise Creators and Off the Record, as well as Atlantic Records Inside the Album, and he produces several shows, such as the political show The New Abnormal and the upcoming comedy punk show Killed by Desk that talks about musicians' day jobs. I also wanted to give a big shout out to my friend Scott Fugger, the host of Fly on the Call, for suggesting I reach out to Jesse over the summer. You have probably seen me retweet Fly on the Call on Twitter. They're an awesome show. I highly recommend you listen. They have candid conversations about music with some artists you know and love, such as Dan Campbell and Silverstein, and a whole bunch of new and upcoming artists that you'll get to hear Scott talk to these artists, and you'll be like, oh my god, this was, I learned so much, and now I'm going to go listen to this band and fall in love with them. They also recently signed to Sound Talent Media, a new podcast network, so please go check out Fly on the Call. Some things I wanted to mention, as I have been the past several months. Please visit antisemitism.card.co and blacklivesmatters.card.co to learn more about anti-Semitism and the Black Lives Matter movement, respectively. We need to speak out against all forms of injustice, and it's not okay to just let stuff slide by because you think a comment someone made is not that bad. We should speak up, and that includes everything from online, if someone makes a hateful comment on a post online or social media, report it if you can. And it includes in person, right? Call out your friends and family when they say stuff that's offensive, that's anti-Semitic, that's racist, that's misogynist, that's slut-shaming, that's fatphobic. Call people out. That's the only way we're going to have change. I'm also going to include in the show notes the petition to save the USPS. Please support the USPS, guys. Without a functioning postal service, independent businesses, such as a lot of your favorite independent bands and record labels, would really be struggling. Finally, Generation GC stickers are here. Do you want some stickers? They're holographic. They're very, very cool looking. Well, you've got two options. Number one, support the show on Anchor. Go to anchor.fm/GenerationGCPod, P-O-D, and that helps me sustain the show. Click support right there on Anchor, and it just helps me have the right equipment, such as new headphones and cords and adapters, as well as do things like print stickers and get them mailed to y'all. Or you can donate to a charitable organization. Just go to blacklivesmatters.card.co. There's a lot of great organizations listed there. And then send me a screenshot of either your support or donation, as well as your mailing address. You can DM me on Twitter or Instagram at GenerationGCPod, P-O-D, or email generationgcpod@gmail.com, and I will mail you stickers. I'll also occasionally tweet or post on the Instagram story about other ways y'all can get stickers, whether that's good deeds you can do or ways to help spread the word about the show, so please make sure you are following. Well, that's about it for our intro, and now on to our episode, Wondering from The Young and the Hopeless with Jesse Cannon.
So we're talking about Wondering, which is track 4 on The Young and the Hopeless. Track 3 is Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and track 5 is Story of My Old Man. I always like to mention the track listing. This, I think, is a really fun track listing because you have 3 pretty high energy songs kind of right in a row.
Since I'm a mastering engineer, I put records in order literally sometimes 3 to 5 a day.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I am such a stickler, and when I was, so I mean, I regularly listen to this record.
Sure, yeah.
But I will say, like, I had a few beers. We were going to do this. Was a little lit up the other night, and I'm like, put it on. I'm like, man, this is an amazing track listing, and some of it is, and I don't like taking away credit because you never know who did what. Like, people get things wrong about who did it, but I will say Eric Valentine, who produced this record, tends to have very good track listings on his records. Like, I think he has great, because track listings are philosophies, and he has, I think, a good philosophy on how to do it.
I love the track listing on this record, and this, as listeners of the show definitely know, this is my favorite album of all time.
Nice.
When I did I think it was episode 10, My Bloody Valentine, with my friend Joel Funk, we talked about,
I know Joel's writing. Yes.
Oh, he's great. Yeah. We had a great episode. When Joel and I talked, he made me think even more about the track listing than I ever had, talking about how, there's all these stories you could kind of weave into it. It's a good track listing, I think.
Yeah. The other thing is, too, is there's nice little ambiences that get the songs in and out of each other, too. That is something I'm always feel, especially on pop punk records. Like, like that needs to be done. Like, if you're doing a garage rock record and you have some like outdoor barbecue song before Girls and Boys, like that's cheesy as fuck on some records, but this, it's like perfection.
Yeah. This, we had, so we're recording this July 30th, and just yesterday we had an episode go up on A New Beginning, which is like a thing that not a lot of other bands in like this specific subset were doing, like those crazy intros. But yeah, so that's a track listing. Wondering is not a single. There was no music video, but they did play this song live a bunch per setlist.fm, as well as like a cursory YouTube search. They played it live a bunch from 2003 to 2008, but like haven't played it at an actual show pretty much since. But Benji and Joel did an acoustic live stream on Veeps back in April, and they did play it acoustic for that. Yeah, that was a cool live stream, and they brought back a lot of stuff they hadn't played in like a decade.
So it was Veeps? I don't think I know this.
Yeah, Veeps. So Benji and Joel actually created that. I think it was originally created for like VIP experiences at shows, and I know they use that for their tours. Yeah, like Veeps,
I remember
VIP.
this now. Yep. Okay. Yes. That's that. I had the TV show in my head, and it wasn't.
Oh yeah. As I keep thinking about Veeps, I'm like trying to, it comes up on the show a lot and stuff, and I'm like, oh, Veeps, no, not like the show, not, Veeps like VIP.
They started Adobe too, is that right? Or is it just the cousin or the brother?
So Josh Madden is their brother. They didn't start it, but I think they like partially own it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm remembering my punk rock startup culture.
Yes. I love it. No, Adobe is great.
Yeah, no, I got a show on it forever.
Yeah. I had Scott Waldman, who does Waldman's Words, and there's a couple of great shows on Adobe that I often listen to.
Nice.
Yeah. So Jesse, I want to help our listeners get to know you a little bit. So first question I love to ask people is, when did you first hear Good Charlotte, and what were your first thoughts on them? So that could be, by the way, as a fan, as someone who makes records, or as just someone who has a lot of experience in the music industry.
Okay, so I actually remember this, which is funny because I have a terrible memory, especially of this period of my life. But I particularly was such a workaholic, and I was, a record producer. I've been a record producer for, as crazy as this sounds, I'm not this old, people. I started at a young age. 27 years I've been recording bands.
Oh my gosh.
I'm 42, but to say I started at 15.
Right, right.
But the thing being is, I am a music video addict. So still to this day at 42, what I do when I get off of work, I sit on my couch, I open YouTube, and I either watch YouTube videos on politics or I watch music videos until I go to bed. Okay. And I still do this. I've done this since I'm probably 9 years old, so it shows what a man-child I am. But I can remember I saw one of the first singles that Good Charlotte put out. And I can remember Benji had Liberty Spikes, and I hear how poppy it is, and I am not a punk purist, but I'm like, oh, fuck this shit. Because at the time, this was the most commercialized thing I'd ever seen of like what we will call street punk for sake of argument.
Right.
And, like I manage some very crusty bands. I'm known for doing those type of bands. And to me, this felt a little icky and like it was polluting my culture. And I'm like, fuck this fucking band. Right. Good Charlotte, fuck you. This sucks.
Yeah.
So I wrote it off. And then the next record comes. I hear Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. I'm like, okay, I respect some of this. And I had also heard that Josh Freese is the studio drummer for this record beforehand. So I am a Josh Freese mega fan. I think he's one of the best drummers. He has one of the most unique sounds. In fact, you wouldn't even need to tell me he played on that record because I can literally just hear his pocket on it and be like, oh, that's Josh Freese pocket. And which is funny because he does a lot of ghost drumming. And you can always tell because it's the worst person to have ghost drumming because he has
such a style.
Yeah. And like, you're like, oh yeah, the drummer got replaced. There's Josh Freese.
Yeah.
And so, but the other thing I had heard, which is, I did some research and not the case for this song, but that Black Dahlia of the Dwarves, who I've been referring to lately as the most cancelable band that's not canceled.
Was that the one there was like something at like a Warped Tour show?
Oh no, he's definitely not worse. So the Dwarves story is that long before Nirvana, I should tell the audience, the reason I'm telling you this is Blag Dahlia is a frequent Eric Valentine, the producer, collaborator, and Blag apparently co-wrote a lot of this record and worked on the record in the studio with the band. I don't know to what extent it's credited, but this was a common thing. And if you've never listened to the Dwarves, there's this record called The Dwarves Are Young and Good Looking because they were old and very ugly. And they became notorious as this band that wrote the best songs, but, started in the 80s and they're old and horrible looking beer gut. The one guy ends up in the Queens of the Stone Age as the bassist, looks horrifying, beats a lot of women. Horrible people, basically. But my God, the songs are amazing. And so this is why Blag Dahlia, a man whose big hit song, let's also say, their popular record before Nirvana gets popular, Nirvana talks about how great they are, gets them more popular, is called Blood, Guts, and Pussy, with women covered in blood and guts naked on the album cover.
Great.
Horrifying stuff.
Yeah.
But the point being, the man could write a song and he's brought in to help on this record. So I had heard that as a massive fan of the Dwarves songwriting. And the other thing being that I'm a huge Eric Valentine fan and that record sounds amazing. I've used it as the Dwarves record. The Dwarves Are Young and Good Looking as a reference. So I'm like, all right, I'm giving this a try. So even though I'm skeptical, I hit play and I go, oh shit. I like this band now. And then a week later, it's like, oh shit.
They're everywhere.
I love this band. And then I have to tell bands that I'm working with. We have to remember during this time, I'm working with like all these very cool emo punk bands. Bands are not happy that I'm listening to Good Charlotte every second we have a listening break is basically the gist of it. But I fell in love and then I've carried through, I like later records. I mean, you contacted me about this as I was posting about later records and
which by the way, your observation about Keep Your Hands Off My Girl, I think you said that it was like super cringe but totally banging, something like that.
Yes. Yeah, it's very cheesy. You know what that song to me was there was this band She Wants Revenge, and it was like, and so She Wants Revenge is this hilarious thing that when I was working with Limp Bizkit, Fred Durst signed that band because he loved Interpol, and they sounded like Interpol.
Okay,
which is just pure comedy. And then I feel like Good Charlotte heard She Wants Revenge and made that song, and it's cringe, it's cheesy, but man, do I fucking love it.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Like, I Don't Want to Be Alone, Keep Your Hands Off My Girl, that is extremely my shit.
Yeah. It's a great record. So we've talked a bit. I mean, you make records, you produce and mix and master records, you have a recording studio. Canon found Soundation. That's like a tongue twister.
Sure is.
You've been working and doing this for a long, long time, but do you remember the first band that you recorded?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first band that wasn't my own band, it was that came out on a record was a band called The Hysterics, and it was one of my good friends' bands who I'm still very good friends with. But then there was like some point around when I was 19 where like strangers would write my AOL.com email address because I'd have that in the records I would do would say produced by Jesse Cannon, caution 767 at AOL.com. And I'd get contacted through that. And because I didn't have a studio per se. I worked at different studios for whatever the band could do. And I mean, it was a fun feel. It was a nice thing the first time it was somebody I didn't know. But now that I'm saying that, I'm like, what band was that? And like, I've done I think I've done between 2,000 and 2,500 records or somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to remember the exact thing, but I do remember when I picked up vinyl and I looked at it. I remember the first time I walked by a record store and I saw something I did in the window and things like that. But man, it's kind of hard to remember the exact
first
band.
one.
It wasn't like, oh, I'm just recording my friends' bands and they're paying me Snapple and Doritos or whatever.
Sure. Hey, Snapple and Doritos are not, I mean, you could do worse.
Not the most nutritional thing, but yeah. So, I mean, you've worked with a lot of bands that people listening to this show have loved. That people listening to the show definitely love. I mean, we talked about Limp Bizkit, you mentioned, but the Menzingers, Misfits, Dillinger Escape Plan, Somos, Man Overboard, Transit, Lifetime, Saves the Day, Real Friends. What makes you want to work with a band in the studio? So there's two things that I've identified that I like as a producer. One is a really strong vision. So like I love so here's a funny thing. It's like I can like progressive music, but I do a lot of prog rock too, which is not really my taste. But what I like about that is I like when bands have what I like to call intent and like they know exactly what they want to do and we're just filling out a vision. But then I also want to do bands that I love. Like, I've both produced and managed the band Somos, and like they're one of the bands I've listened to the most in my life. And, the
great band.
Thank you. And and like, to that, some of my best friends and all the things, but even it was that funny thing of it just creeped up on me of like when we did their first record, I just was like all of a sudden, like before it had even come out, I'm like, man, I've listened to this record more than I've listened to most records I've ever listened to.
Yeah.
And I want to love the music. I should say I don't really produce bands unless I think we're going to go in and really work at making an amazing record anymore. I don't really like to just go in the studio with the band and fuck around and find out, as they say these days.
Sure.
But I mean, I mix and master everything, but production drains my life. And if I'm going to sacrifice my life of thinking about a song,
you want it to be a good fucking song.
Yeah. So that's what it is it needs to be that, or I need to see a passion at a level that is just like, okay, these people really want to do this and they know what they want to do. This is going to be fun to create something and find their vision, because I'm going to learn from that and that's going to be enjoyable. And I also just usually find those are the records that do well.
Yeah. I feel like in general, that's like, I think in any field, I mean, listeners, Jesse knows my boss at my job at Hit Video Promo. you know, when we take on a client that we're promoting a video and it's a video that like we all love, like we're so excited about it and it's a great time for everyone.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I've respected about your boss over the years is he's told people straight up when he doesn't think he can do a good job. And that's one of the most good qualities in anyone in the music business.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but he has that. Andy Gessner is so enthusiastic.
It's true. It really is true.
It is true. So on top of producing and mixing and mastering, I mean, you have multiple podcasts, both that you host as well as produce. So I'm gonna list them all. I think I've got them. So you have Noise Creators, Inside the Album with Atlantic Records, which, by the way, I had listened to the episode on Wallows because I love that band.
Oh, nice. Same. Yeah. I'm a huge fan. I was so happy to do that.
Yeah. I interviewed them when they were at the Atlantic office last winter.
Oh, nice.
Great band. I mean, we had a great interview, but I had listened to that and I didn't realize it was you till I think after the fact. So you have The New Abnormal, and then you have Killed by Desk. Did I get that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
so
correct.
That's like former punk guys that now have day jobs.
Yes, that's the podcast interviews people. We don't allow them to talk about their music. They can only talk about their day jobs that they have to support their music career or post their music career. It's very funny. It's so funny.
That's hilarious. That's such a great concept. And I feel like, I mean, that's obviously a reality because, frankly, most punk bands don't last from, you know, age 16 till retirement.
Yeah. And that is a lot of what we get into is that, like, did you plan this? Did you, what did you see? And like everybody's story, we're about 15 episodes in. I should say it's not out, but it's because we're trying to have the best 15 episodes to figure out which order they go in and be a little far ahead because everybody who works in it also has a job. But it's crazy because no one's the same story, even a little. Some of the syndromes that punk give you, definitely the same.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yes. Punk fucks you up for the real world and also prepares you for the real world is the thing we've been learning.
Okay. I like that. I'm excited I'm excited for that to come out because that's a very fun concept. You also have a big thing you've been doing lately is this YouTube channel.
Yes.
And that I think goes along, it seems to go along with pretty similar themes to your book, Get More Fans. And, you know, when I was originally working on my notes, I was going to ask like how things have changed for you over the past few months, but it kind of seems like everything you do is about adapting and figuring out how to make things work in the current circumstance.
That is a great observation because I mean my YouTube channel was the thing that I realized people don't consume this in book form, and it's crazy because that book is so popular.
It's like taught at some universities, right?
It's taught at a dozen universities, and
crazy.
But even despite that, like the amount of people I've reached on 6 months on YouTube, I feel like is more people. I've had more letters written to me about my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I have 8. I think I've sold like 13 or 14,000 of that book. But with YouTube, you're going to reach 13 or 14,000 people every month.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's insane to see how much that is. But yeah, I mean, I knew I needed to be on YouTube for years. And then it's just like that thing of telling yourself you have to do another thing is very hard. And then, you know, this virus happened. And then I just started doing lots of other things because I didn't want to be in the studio with people and you could do podcasts remotely.
Right.
And and then, you know, all of a sudden I'm producing this top, you know, my political podcast went to number 3 on the entire chart.
Insane. That's amazing.
And yeah, life's real weird when, you know, you wake up to MAGA people threatening your life now every morning when before it was just like, you know, some
like
guitarist
punks thinking you weren't cool because you'd listen to Good Charlotte.
Yes.
And you thought that
somebody,
was bad.
Or somebody threatening my life because they thought their master was coming today when it was the day after. And they're like, where is it? And
oh, God.
I told you Friday, it's Thursday. You musicians never can tell what day it is. God damn you.
No.
But yeah, strange life. But yes, the YouTube channel is super, super fulfilling and it's really fun for me. And I really have been enjoying learning video because I never had edited a video before I did it. So that's been really fun to learn.
I have to give you credit, by the way, because I had never been a fan of the 1975. I think, to be perfectly honest, largely put off by Maddie Healy's
it's easy to
persona.
That's easy to do.
But I've been going through, I watched your video on like everything, what they've done right, and I've been going through their records now, and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to open myself up. I don't know if I'd say I'm a full fan yet, but I'm going through the records, and I really liked the first 2 records. So
I will say this, that if you're coming from Good Charlotte, and punk, then the first record is definitely the one that gets you, and that takes a while to get to the rest. But yes, I mean, by far my favorite band, and I appreciate that. That's really awesome, because it is that thing of like, I joke that I basically also run a covert 1975 fan YouTube that's disguised as a business promotion channel. But so it's nice to see I'm making converts.
Oh yeah. So I had to ask this. I'm like so curious, but if you were to have produced any Good Charlotte record, which one would it be, and what might you have done things differently?
So I think it would have to be this one, because this one does have my favorite songs on it. I mean, it's my favorite one.
Sure, yeah.
But like, what's interesting is like when you become a record producer who's really working like all the time and really going through it, what you like is things that you can't do. And what you appreciate is like, so, like I can remember I've always been someone who likes pop music a lot. Like I definitely like grew up both listening to like fucking the most political punk bands while then put on a Madonna.
I mean, Somos,
yeah. And like, I grew up listening to really political punk, but then I'd put on a Madonna or a Public Enemy record. I always liked pop, but then there was a lot of years I didn't. But what I love about pop and lots of dance music that I listen to is I have no idea how to do it. And even like if I tried forever to do it. And part of what's amazing about this record is when you hear the string flourishes and all these just really smart things, I'm like, I don't know that I could produce that. But then that Eric Valentine is, and you're like, oh, this is the perfect person. Now, whereas I'm so bad with album names. Good Morning Revival.
Good Morning Revival, yeah.
Oh wow, I got it right. I should have just said it confidently. Okay, that one sounds weird to me, and I'm like, I'd like to mix it different. I could definitely feel like I could do some levels where it would be at least more pleasing to my own taste.
Okay,
but this one, I'm like, there's really nothing I'd change, and I don't feel, I will be honest, I don't think I'd do as good a job as Eric Valentine did.
Yeah.
I mean, so Eric Valentine, incidentally, has an amazing YouTube channel now.
Oh, does he?
Dad. And it's funny, he hasn't done this yet. He actually goes on and does dissections of songs he's produced where he opens the Pro Tools file with the band members for like 3 hours. He did like Smash Mouth All-Star for like 3 hours.
Stop! Oh my God.
I hate that song.
But I love that song.
Okay, well, you have 3.5 hours ahead of you.
Oh, thank God. Thank God.
But like, he hasn't done this yet, and I've been waiting for it very hardcore. But it really is awesome, and I just respect what that man does so much that it's like, damn, I don't know that I could ever hit this mark.
So I had we connected over Instagram, Jesse, and I was asking you what songs you might be interested in talking about. What made you want to talk about Wondering in particular?
This is one of those songs that I think has such interesting things. Like, like what other punk song has orchestra hits, timpani hits, and then like the lyrics too. Like like I often tell people, like, so one of the biggest things when you're producing records is you're all like, a lot of people think producing is like, oh, you got the song in time and in tune. But for me, I'm much more of like, what's the lens we need to see this through? Are we not looking at this right? So like a lot of times, like when I'm like, the second verse isn't that good, you should rewrite it. And everybody then thinks they need to think things more complex. Like, oh, I failed because I didn't put too much think. I'm like, and sometimes you have to say, dog, girls don't like boys, girls like cars and money.
If you want me to wait, I will wait for you.
Yeah, and like I will say this one is a little worse in the lyric department. Like it's definitely there's some cliches, but the funny thing is, so I also have this other saying that if a band walks into a studio and another band has left lyrics up, it doesn't matter how good the lyrics are. The next band will pick the lyrics and go, holy shit, these are stupid lyrics. I've even decided with my ex-girlfriend, we made a joke about it. She did not believe me about this, but she was staying at the studio with me for a while. And so what we did is we left a T.S. Eliot poem up, and sure enough, it happened. Is one of the most widely regarded great poems of genius. And everybody still goes, it's dumb. I'll say this. If I picked these lyrics up and I didn't know the song, I'd be like, wow, is this a brain-damaged fifth grader?
Right.
Who wrote this?
Right.
When you hear it with the song, it's fucking amazing. And, you know, it's like that funny thing.
I think it's the only, like, positive, like, love song on this record, now that I'm thinking about it. Even though we'll talk about this in a second. It's not really a love song.
Yes. I learned this from your notes. So.
Yes. But it's the only one that sounds like it's a positive love song on this record.
And what I would also say is like what we have to remember is like I say in my book Processing Creativity that music is a mood altering drug. We put on a song to make us feel a way we'd rather feel. And you know, you put this song on, you know, you might be feeling somewhat melancholy or whimsical about someone. And, you know, if you identify with something that's said in it at some point. And, I mean, I think that there's been times it's like, I'll have this one on when I'm like, you know, you're in that point in the relationship where you don't quite know where you're at with that person. And, like, you know, there's just nice lines in there, and it doesn't need to be that complicated. And you know, I appreciate this song for its simple stupidity.
Yes.
That's in there.
So what's your and without, you know, what you have gleaned from seeing my notes, but what's your interpretation of what this song is about?
I mean, you'd think it was a relationship. You know, like here's the thing is as much as in punk, we're all told like it's so dumb to sing about relationships. The fact of the matter is relationships are some of the most complex things in our lives that we feel more from than anything else. Like while, you know, I'm a very political person, you're not every day going to want to wake up and just hear like rah 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 the president's a fucking idiot who tells you to drink a miracle drug or whatever the fuck somebody's gonna sing. And you know, I definitely feel like I have that. And with this song is like this is a particularly like type of song you'll hear. And whereas like, you know, if I'm just having a barbecue in the backyard and like Girls and Boys comes on, I'm gonna be like on the fucking table singing. You know, and that's what the thing is, like, I don't look past a lot of songs, past just the emotion that they inspire in me, because nothing else really makes much sense aside from that.
Yeah. This song, so, I mean, like you, and I think like everyone, when I first heard it, I just assumed it was about, you know, his girlfriend. But, and I figure probably most of the people listening to this know, but I'm sure some of them don't. This song was written about Benji's dog at the time, Cash Dog, who was a boxer named after Cassius Clay, aka Muhammad Ali. And I was trying to find, I was like, okay, like I know that that's the thing, and that's what this song is about. I guess they mentioned it on TRL, but it was also in like one of the album extras. Like when you would get the CD and you'd put it in your computer and it would have videos on it.
Enhanced CD is what we would call it. Yeah.
As I was kind of thinking about it though, I feel like part of this song is written from the dog's point of view. Like,
it's an interesting read right there.
But like, okay, if you want me to wait, I will wait for you. If you tell me to stay, I would stay right through. Like, what do you tell your dog? Hey, buddy, wait. Hey, stay. You know.
I mean, she's doing it right next to me right now.
Yeah.
Like, reading the lyrics right now, I think you got a solid point here. That also shows some real, okay, hot take coming in.
Yeah.
Because Benji has a popular dog's name, does he empathize with the dog?
Oh, he might.
Yeah.
He might.
Okay. I think I'm on to something here.
Yeah. Okay. I like scrolled down to see the lyrics. So my thought now is that the chorus is like kind of from the dog's point of view, and the dog is wondering because it's a dog. The cash dog did not speak English. And the verses are from, the human's point of view. But I think it's kind of celebrating like that, very wonderful feeling of adopting and finding a dog and how great that is.
I'm also going to come in hot here since I'm going to give the caveat. I don't know if they're with their drug and alcohol intake is, but these kind of do read like stoned guide dog thoughts.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I've definitely like been sitting around my the concept of like a hot couch DVD place, like for the audience, there's a concept that in every small town there's some house that you go to where it's a disgusting leather couch and there's always a DVD menu on the screen and everybody's just smoking cigarettes. I feel like I've heard the stoned guy, the hot couch DVD menu thing, sitting there like, I just want to wonder, like, is
what
he
are
just
you thinking
like, happy?
about?
Yeah, like you don't have to say anything, dude. Like I can see you're happy, So,
I love that, and I personally am just personal lifestyle choice. I don't partake in anything. But I love that, and that's very very fitting. That's very fitting. Like, oh, like I love you. You're so great. You've made my life so much better.
Whether you partake or not, all I know is we've all encountered the person who all they can do is conceive of what their dog's thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. So let's talk about dogs for a second.
Okay. Yeah. I want to do that.
So do you have a dog?
We have a dog in the house. I should say, it's my dear friend who I live with's dog, but I am a dedicated dog uncle. Her name is Violet.
I love that.
And she's a Stafford Terrier who's 3.5 years old.
Oh.
And she loves running in backyards and mostly since she's black and white like a cow, we say that she's a tipped cow most of the day. She's just laying on her bed.
I love that.
Being tipped. And I do often, like she does a very strange thing. Like I was mentioning, I at the end of the night, I watch my YouTube. And I have it on the TV, and she orientates herself so she can stare at me the whole time, which is very strange.
Hilarious.
But I wonder, like, what are you thinking while you're just staring at me this whole time? And so, maybe this is the thought.
Right. Well, she probably is like, oh, I know that this makes him so happy and relaxed. And
this is true.
So I'm a huge dog person.
Great.
I do know, by the way, I know that Benji and Joel both have dogs. Joel and his family, they have, I think, just one, but I'm not positive. Benji and his wife, Cameron, they have 4 dogs, which is
wow.
Yeah, that's so many, and I love it. I love dogs. I lived with my parents until a few years ago, and we had this little guy, Dobby, who is a mutt. He is currently about like 12 and a half pounds. But he is such a good boy, and I love that dog so much. He, because I spent a lot of years in college, but then coming back, and then, when I wasn't touring, there would be a lot of years where I was like doing freelance photography and sitting on the couch for 4 hours with the dog kind of snuggled right in there.
Oh, the best.
So great. And I don't live all that far from them now. So I go up to visit, and he still runs over, he runs up to the door. He says hello. And it's like the greatest thing. 'Cause it's like, no matter what is going on, like I feel like it's more since I've moved out and he doesn't see me every day. But I no matter what my day has been like, I get to the front door, I ring my parents' front door, and he comes up and he's like, "Oh my God, hello."
It's one of the greatest feelings. You know, if I'm gone for a few days, the way she greets me,
yeah,
it is always one of those feels like, oh, it's so nice.
It's so great. Dogs are like, they're loyal, and I can't talk about Dobby without mentioning the fact that he is like, can be kind of my mom doesn't like this word, but I kind of think he's a little bit of a diva. He likes attention, and he doesn't like when people are, they used to have a cat, and he didn't like when the cat would steal the attention.
Yes.
But he's so friendly and sweet, and like, if you are nice to him, he is nice to you.
I see. I think that there's divas and then there's brats as well.
Yeah.
Ours is a little bratty at times. And then there's just the mellow ones that are just doing their own thing. That are much more cat-like. Like I obviously, you know, the cats could give no fucks about if you live or die. You know, they'll walk over your corpse while you're choking.
Our cat that we had, well, the cat that we had growing up, I like don't even remember too well, but the cat that they my parents had more recently was just so skittish that like you could go 3 days and not see him in the house. Yeah.
That is a rare cat behavior, because usually it's like they're going everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, he was straight up a feral cat that we literally rescued. But like, I had a friend, I have 2 incidents that I remember. One where like a friend who is a big cat person, like loves cats. We're sitting in my bedroom with the door open, and the cat comes up and she's like, "Oh, come here, kitty." And I'm like, no, she's not going to come in. And the cat bolts away. And another where a different friend was staying overnight and like makes eye contact with a cat in the hallway, and the cat immediately just bolts. But Dobby, on the other hand, is very much like, no, don't stop paying attention to me. Love me. Pay attention to me. Pet me. I love that dog so much.
I'm just saying this. You sound very inspired, and personally, I think there should be more songs about dogs. So,
yes,
you know, like I'm all for this. If we're inspiring anything here, I hope it's that, since we could all wax so poetically about these dogs, more songs about the dogs, especially if they end up as good as this.
There's, I should link it in the show notes, but I guess it's pronounced Modern Mag, MDRN. But they had a list of songs you didn't know were about dogs, and this was one of them. And I just have to read from the blurb. They say, rumors have it that Cash Dog coined the term pup punk. Which I'm pretty sure, I want to say maybe it was Real Friends did a shirt that had a dog that said pup punk.
I'm going to go as far to say as I saw that in the 90s. So I'm giving all these people the hell no.
Yeah. But I like it though. I don't know if we can credit Cash Dog with pup punk, but it's a fun mention.
Well, you know, we could give it, you know, when there's these bands, I've been trying to coin a term for this, but like when you're the big band of a genre and you're much bigger than everybody else, like, you know, the ambassadors, let's say, of the genre to the mainstream, that you can get away with a lot of that. You're just the person who brought an idea that was pretty prevalent around to everybody. And like, you know, any of these bands, like, you're always doing ideas that like 30 other people had, because they're low hanging fruit and easy good ideas. And pop punk seems right. And if Good Charlotte popularized that, you go, boys.
Yeah. I mean, I had not even heard it in context with this song until this article, but, you know, maybe other people were using it. I don't know.
First for me is seeing it outside of a shirt.
Yeah. I mean, I love dogs. I freaking love dogs. My place right now is not pet friendly, but I am so excited for the day when I, you know, live somewhere where I can get a dog and I can then rescue my own little dog, and the internet's just gonna get a flood of pictures of said dog.
Yes,
that's just gonna be how it is. The internet gets plenty of pictures of Dobby, and I only see him a couple times a month, but I'm very excited to get my own dog.
As you should be, because it really does bring the thing. The one thing I will say is just the waking up in the morning. So I'm a very not morning person. I feel like every time it's my responsibility to walk her in the morning, it's exactly the morning that I don't want to do it.
Yeah. I've several times when my parents have gone out, I have stayed up there for several days or close to a week and done the full care for little Dobby, who is definitely not a low needs dog. But it's worth it. It's totally worth it. If we're talking about dogs, though, I have to mention, we're talking about the song, I have to mention, and I'm like trying not to get emotional, I have to mention my childhood dog, Mickey, who we got when I was 11. He was a Sheltie, very different in temperament than Dobby.
I feel like Shelties are very unique in temperament.
Yeah, he was a great dog, but he was a herding dog.
Mm-hmm.
And, my sister was like, I want to say kindergarten, elementary school at this time. And so he would like herd my sister and her friends. And like, but he was a very good dog. We had to put him down when I was in college, and I just remember like sitting in my dorm room and just like blasting this song on repeat and being like, no, Mickey.
Oh
yeah, Mickey was he was a very good boy.
Well, the moments when music has to comfort us with a pet loss, that is the worst time of music, but glad it's there for us.
Oh God, I was quite glad to have it. I have to also mention, as we're talking about Cash Dog, that Cash Dog also gets a little shout out on the day that I die. When they say Cash Dog was barking, went to the park and enjoyed it one last time, which, not to even go too deep on that song, but that is a dark song.
That is a dark song, I feel like.
Yeah, it's a very dark song, but with like a very jovial kind of tune. Did you have any like specific memories or stories you wanted to share about Wondering, Jesse?
You know, it's funny. So there's this weird record producer nerd thing of this song that so there's these hard cuts on this record, like particularly Girls and Boys of the Bridge, where the guitar solo is, and they do the like claps. So this was a thing that was very first era Pro Tools, is that everybody's like, oh my God, I can cut to total silence because there's no tape hiss and there's no
I'm thinking
noise.
of a cut in Hold On too.
Yes, there's all over this record, very hard cuts. And what I remember everybody was very inspired by is there was the Eminem song You Don't Want to Fuck with Shady. Which the music does the same hard cuts, and then everybody wanted those. Like I remember it was a thing in all these studios that everybody be like asking for the hard cuts, and I didn't know how to do them yet. And it's a certain technique, and I can remember like listening and just experimenting, trying to get the hard cuts of this song and Girls, Boys, and like it was just it was a learning experience. But then once I learned how to do it, I was a better producer for it.
Yeah, that's a great example of kind of listening to something that you're like, I don't know if I can do this, and just kind of pushing yourself and learning new things from it.
Yeah, and that is a lot of what early days, even later days, but like record production, you're just going to be, you're always be listening, trying to figure out how somebody did something. It's kind of part of the thrill. And yeah, it's funny too, because like, this record, so, if you think of like what also makes this production so good is punk has the weird job that like mainstream metal and mainstream rock don't have, is that if it's too polished, people are like, oh, hell no, I can't do that. Like you need to balance a rawness with a polish. Like I actually, so funny, another Eric Valentine record, Taking Back Sundays Louder Now, I think a lot of people would say that was the hair too polished.
It's very polished. I love that record though. It's a great record.
Listen, some of the best songs, and like whatever bits of the recording that annoy me, you cannot deny that the emotion on that record is just unbelievable.
Oh my god, yeah.
And the fact that they had that 3-record run that was that good is a very rare thing. But but this record is both very dry while just aggressive enough, while just polished enough, and it does that job perfectly.
Yeah, the first record is definitely, I would say, much more polised.
I believe the first record is a Howard Benson record.
No. Is it not? The first record is Don Gilmore.
That makes sense. The Linkin Park
going to work with without too much going down this rabbit hole. I might even cut this part out. They were going to work with Howard Benson for Cardiology. They wrote a bunch of songs, and I think Benji was kind of the driving force to be no, F this. And then they, I believe, brought in Don Gilmore again for Cardiology.
Gotcha.
So they've never done a record with Howard Benson.
That makes sense because Howard is a very polarizing person who a lot of people go, nah, I'm good on this after they work with him for a while. Yeah. That is a common thing, but now that does make sense because Don Gilmore is that same level of polish as Howard Benson, and way more polished than Eric Valentine. Yeah, and they did a few records with Don Gilmore. So I know they have a relationship with him too. I'm a big Don Gilmore fan. In fact, here's a weird string. Okay. Good Morning Revival, strongly influenced by the band Young Love. Yes. And the band Young Love, before that, the singer was in the band Recover, whose major label debut was produced by Don Gilmore and then thrown away. Wow. Because they didn't like how polished Don Gilmore made it. And I have a copy of the polished version that never came out, and it's one of my favorite things I've ever listened to, and they were fools to throw it away, is my hot take. Wild. It's kind of a cold take because I've felt this way for the 13 years I've had it, but sure. Right. I remember reading that their record label at first really wanted to push them as very polished and family friendly, which we'll get into the family friendliness of this record in a second. And they were and so the first record was, I would say, they literally have a song called Thank You Mom on the first record. Yes, half the first record is about, their dad and that terrible situation. But, they also talk about loving their mom. But then they went a little aggressive for this. And then Chronicles, they go pretty dark. So there's that whole thing. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the critical response to this song, which is one of my favorite parts of this show because, Good Charlotte has not always been a band that critics like, as we will see. So Rate Your Music, which I think is a fan-generated site, which, by the way, trying to find reviews and interviews that cite this song was kind of tricky because wondering is such a common word. And it's a word people use quite frequently when they're answering detailed interview questions. So there was a lot of scrolling through pages and pages of Google results. But Rate Your Music, overall, we're kind of so-so on this. But this user said, wondering, I can't get mad at this. Lyrically very cliched, but a very sincere, sweet song, seemingly about being a supportive partner to someone who's changed your life for the better. It's kind of catchy, too. Yeah, that's pretty much what we've been saying. That it's, cliche, I think, is the more PG version of saying stoner thoughts. That's a great line I just had. That cliched is a more PG way of saying stoner thoughts. Yes, but it is, right? Yes.
Okay, let's talk about this Pop Matters review. I won't read this whole paragraph. Pop Matters, I've mentioned some other reviews they've done of different Good Charlotte songs, and Pop Matters has not categorically been super nice to Good Charlotte. They were not a fan of A New Beginning, which, I strongly disagree with. But we're just going to start mid-paragraph. Sure, there are all the bouncy guitar riffs, the catchy melodies, and the requisite whoa-ohs, but every other punk pop band in America is doing this as well. Wondering is incredibly lightweight, despite the inclusion of more timpanis, ? While the embarrassing Girls and Boys apes the 1980s pop sound that 80s punk fans despised back then.
Disagree.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm coming at this with incredible bias. Like, I have a Good Charlotte tattoo. I run this podcast. But I try to, I try to come at things with a critical lens of like, what is valid criticism, yet the person writing it has a stick up their butt versus like what is someone is just trashing on Good Charlotte and making stuff up.
Or just being genuinely, one of the things I think we, like there's that saying, don't attribute malice when incompetence is more likely.
Yeah, totally.
When I read this review, and I'm reading a little bit more than you did to the audience, I'm reading pure incompetence. So, for example, first
it doesn't
off,
sound like someone who is like the target audience of this record at all.
Yeah, and also incredibly lightweight, despite the inclusion of more timpanis. Timpanis, I don't know that makes anything. Like, timpani in a rock song is usually just high drama. And Girls and Boys apes 1980s pop sound. There's no truth that Girls and Boys is literally just punk melodies singing a really dumb pop song of the moment. Right. That's literally just taking what the Backstreet Boys lyrics would have been and putting it on a cliche punk song. Like every bit of that song.
Which, by the way, I don't remember if it was Benji or Joel, but one of them had said that they always wanted to be like Minor Threat meets the Backstreet Boys. That was the combo.
Go. That's the song. That is literally the song. It's just a slowed down tempo of most punk. What I would argue that song is it's Social Distortion, who obviously they love, and with literally just the Backstreet Boys lyrics.
Yeah.
Bad review there. Pop matters.
Bad review there. I think this is a person who is definitely much older than the target audience.
Yes.
And I am gonna go so far as to say this person probably has a stick up their butt. But
I'm not debating that.
Frankly, as many music critics do.
That's right.
And I say this as someone who has spent a lot of years writing about music. Hopefully, I don't have a stick up my butt, but
yeah, that's what I was going to say. It says I have too, but I better not have that stick up my butt.
Right. I think if anyone thought I had a stick up my butt about music criticism, I think I have proved I don't by virtue of doing a Good Charlotte podcast.
This is true.
Like, there was that Galaxy Brain meme.
Oh yes, I use it all the time.
Oh, there was one. I saw a good one that was about like the progression was about going from like falling in love with the scene to kind of disavowing it to listening to stuff nostalgically to eventually coming to a point of being like, oh, this is like actually good, and I'm not gonna say it's only nostalgic. Like, I genuinely enjoy it now, and that went around Twitter. It went around Twitter like right when I was kind of starting the podcast a few months ago, and I was like, oh, and starting a Good Charlotte podcast. Great example of this.
The funniest experience for me was when I was working on a lot of this type of music. I was always living in cool hipster Brooklyn before it was anything, and like when I would tell people I worked on emo records, it'd be like I would like date girls and be like, please don't tell people.
Oh my god.
And like, never mind, like when I was managing like Man Overboard, it'd be like, oh, you're not that pop punk thing. Now it's like literally every bar I walk into, it's like, it's emo night, it's this, and it's that, and it's like that funny thing of, yes, it nostalgia all comes around the way people grow up and goes around, but I'm much happier to be alive during this point because I am so much happier when I walk into a bar and I hear this stuff than hearing some fucking shitty ass classic rock that I never want to hear again.
Right. Same. Same. I like hearing stuff that I enjoy, that I relate to.
Yeah, I love that, before this pandemic, the last time I walked into a bar, it's like somebody's just putting on the latest Menzingers records for the whole thing, and I'm like, life is good now. Life is finally good.
Yeah. So we mentioned that Good Charlotte are somewhat family friendly.
Yes.
So we have a review from commonsensemedia.org. Common Sense Media basically rates all forms of media on how appropriate they are for families and children, what age they are suited for, what's helpful and harmful. I found a similar website that was like judged a different record on how Christian appropriate it was. But hey, if we're going to talk about the discourse around Good Charlotte, we're going to talk about the entire discourse. So here's what Common Sense Media had to say. Is it any good? When you listen to some of the subversive themes on this CD, it's no wonder the band is popular with young teens. But if rebellion is the name of Good Charlotte's game, it's spiced with self-aware humor that keeps them out of the principal's office and a flickering optimism found in tracks like Wondering that maybe love conquers all. Common Sense Media suggests that families can talk about the self-destructive, dangerous behaviors discussed in the songs. They also have a rating thing, right? And parents rated this album as appropriate for ages 11 plus. Kids also rated this album as appropriate for ages 11 plus. And I liked that they had that distinction because, probably the parents will be a little more conservative than the kids. But Common Sense themselves rated it as 15 plus because the record is sometimes rude, crude, and lewd and humorous.
Okay, I like this. So if I was marketing this record, I might take that review and put it on the cover because it would sell more copies.
Oh, totally. Totally. Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with anything they have to say,
It seems like the Christians got it right for once.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree. And I feel like maybe that's what makes Good Charlotte the most not punk, is not the fact that, like, their songs are poppy, but the fact that their songs are explicitly, I would say, relatively family friendly. Like, punk is not supposed to be family friendly. But
yeah, this is interesting too. I haven't thought about that because I always say I hate wholesomeness in music.
Yeah, which yes, this record is less quote unquote wholesome than the first one, but like.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think I don't think they fall into wholesome. Like, wholesome to me is like Taylor Swift, but they're definitely like way closer to the edge of wholesome than most things.
Yes.
You know what's too wholesome when you're doing mainstream punk? Simple Plan. That's too wholesome for me. I don't fuck with that.
Which I also am a big Simple Plan fan, and growing up, they were also very big to me. But the first time I saw Good Charlotte was when they toured with Simple Plan. I mean, those bands share a lot of fans, right? And what's funny to me is that, yes, Simple Plan is and like has remained in their music very wholesome. But in like 2005, they would be like a little crude on stage. Not necessarily in the Blink-182 way where they were just like, oh, fuck, shit, piss, cock, whatever.
Yeah.
But like talking about how the audience were so sexy and like... which, in light of recent allegations, Simple Plan saying those things to a crowd of, like, largely young teen girls is, like, somewhat problematic.
Never a good look for a pop punk these bands. I made a meme, like, last year. I started to notice that all the pop punk bands, when they do photos, they now put their hands over their junk. And they fold them. And I'm like, this is what you guys need to do more often.
Yeah.
Like, keep it to yourself. No one wants that thing. Get it away.
Yeah, it's a lot has sadly come up even from people that I mean, it's like I wanted to say I didn't expect it from Simple Plan, but like
yeah, you'd be a fool not to if any pop punk band at this point,
right? Something I wanted to talk about, Jesse. So we mentioned your book Get More Fans before. I mean, kind of relevant to talk about, with what we've been talking about Good Charlotte, in that, as we just heard, they have not always been loved or appreciated by critics, as we have just heard. But they've always had dedicated fans, right? I mean, that's why I did this podcast, because I know that, like, a band with dedicated fans, not only will I have a lot of people that have great stories, but a lot of people who will hopefully listen to it, right? You are, you're definitely very knowledgeable about how bands can build their fan base. You give a lot of, like, specific tips on your YouTube channel and stuff. What do you think Good Charlotte has done right? And what do you think they've maybe done wrong that has impacted how they've built their fan base?
So I think what made this be the breakout record, I mean, obviously it always helps to just have a good record before.
Sure.
It's a great one. But, I think they came on a little strong with the imagery the first time of seeming, there was this very big thing that back then you weren't able to look like you were in 3 different bands. And I think the biggest problem,
everyone in the band had to look kind of similar.
Yeah, and like they definitely, like, I can't remember the other guitarist's name, but he looks very like Marilyn Manson-y.
Billy.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
And he looked a little Marilyn Manson-y compared to them, and that did not do them many favors. But then they learned on this record, it's like the video's very strong and asserting, like, we are rebels, not just a counterculture thing that you understand. And it definitely, the positioning, and bands, I tell everybody, like, my YouTube channel talks a lot about music videos, and obviously I talked about how much I watch them, but it is also because music videos are often where you do the most work doing positioning. And if you have an opportunity to show people what your position is and who you are, and I'm not saying this in an authentic way, is like, not everything is like, oh, I'm going to dress up like a skeleton, so we position ourselves like this. You choose how people see you in various different ways, and they did a great job on this record. And I made sure I actually watched their music videos in chronological order.
Oh, love that.
In preparation for this. I gave up after the 4th record, I'm going to say.
Fair enough.
It was getting late. It was about 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Anyway, they really, like, figured out what's the thing to do, and they figured out what were the right looks and all the things, and it got way better message wise. And so I think that they did that really well. And then, the other thing too was, it's like, I remember very distinctly, they were a band that had very diverse tours, and that is a very important thing when you're doing this type of thing. Like, when people can't figure out how to place you, and you don't really fall into a easy bucket. Like, it's one thing if you're just like, oh yeah, we're like Against Me. Well, tour with bands that are like Against Me. There's lots of those. But like, when you're a band that doesn't fit into like one bucket, like Good Charlotte, you got to just diversify your bonds.
Yeah.
Do your thing and do all that. And they did that very well.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely did. And I don't think you can hear it on this record so much, but like, Benji and Joel started a band because they saw the Beastie Boys many years ago.
Interesting. I think about the Beastie Boys a lot.
Yeah.
Because our Killed by Desk podcast, I feel like it's like the Beastie Boys of podcasts. So
what do you mean?
The energy of the early Beastie Boys is how that podcast feels to listen to.
Okay.
It's very smart, and it's very chaotic and wild.
Okay.
And it's also very New York.
I love it. I love it. So, Jesse, how has Wondering held up for you over time?
I will tell you, so here's an interesting thing.
Yes.
A lot of pop punk has not held up well in my life for me.
Same.
And it's not even always just the cancellations or the bad things. Like, like, I loved those bands, the Screeching Weasel and the Queers when I was young. And it's not even just that, like, the singers of some of those bands, Punch Women, or are massive Trump fans that made me, because before that all happened, their music just really didn't stand up for me. But I will tell you, I mean, as we know, we're doing this podcast because I was staying up, listening to some Good Charlotte at 2 a.m. or something. And that is a thing I do. And I just really still enjoy this record. I would definitely crank Girls and Boys, particularly just many times out of just sheer like, let's put on some bangers, get in a good mood while I'm like cleaning or something.
Yeah.
And this holds up very well to me.
I love that. So, I mean, you sort of went into it, but I like asking this. This is like one of my closing questions, but what has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed?
Well, I guess the sad thing is there's like this thing, I was talking about this because it's very funny because it changed now, is I used to use Spike Lee as the example of like when there's been so many years that somebody's been putting out things that you used to love their art, but then you don't really love what you've heard from them in recent years. I can't say I keep a lot of touch in what they're doing now.
Sure.
And so that part of it, it's always sad, but sometimes you're like, all right, fool me once, fool me twice, there's a very common music business thing is that you in startup talk, we call it, you can't have 2 down rounds. That like, basically if you go and you do worse fundraising 2 times, you might as well stick a fork in it. And with bands, it's very similar. If you do 2 records,
you have one bad record,
people will forgive it.
Right.
If you come back with the next, I mean, one of the great examples I love to do is, before American Idiot, the idea of Green Day ever making good music again to most people was not on the menu.
Then Green Day was like the biggest punk band in the world, arguably, possibly still is.
They were able to do it, but it is very rare that anybody's going to do more than one record that people don't identify very well with and then come back. And they had enough that I didn't connect with any of the songs that we're not in touch anymore. They drop a record, I'm probably not hitting play on it.
That's fair. And that happens. And there's plenty of bands that maybe there's like older stuff that I am still putting on repeat, or I'm like, okay, this is something that like was very, very near and dear to me in high school, but I just haven't kept up with it. And I think that's supernatural.
Yep. And I accept that happens, but thankfully we still have the good times that we can revisit together sometimes.
Yes. So do you have any last words about wondering about Good Charlotte or about yourself?
Well, let's see if I have anything else in my extensive notes that I put here.
Yes.
No, it looks like I crossed everything off my list that I had to say about the song. So that means we killed it.
Yes. Awesome. So, Jesse, one thing I've been doing is a Generation GC and Friends playlist on Spotify where I include, the song we're talking about in the episode, as well as recommendations from our guests. So can you give me a recommendation?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I listen to that I think someone who would like Good Charlotte will do. Because I do, it's like a funny thing is I still do listen to a lot of punk and a lot of mainstream punk. What am I liking that would be in this way? So here's something that probably a lot of the people would not know, but maybe they would appreciate that. I think if you appreciate it, there's a band called Pale Waves.
Okay,
I love that band. I would not say that they're exactly similar. They're much more, I'd call them 80s punk, but I think they have a similar melodic sense. I'd say they're one of my favorite bands of the past few years. Particularly,
if you like 1975 so much, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that Maddie wrote their first 3 songs with them, but I do think that the 80s thing is the similar feel, but really they don't have that much in common to me, just aside from Maddie helping at first. But they have a song, Television Romance. I think if you like Good Charlotte, I think if you like Good Charlotte, you might vibe with that song.
Okay. That's a great one. Wait, just because I think you've made me a 1975 convert, what would be, if you could give one 1975 song to convert people?
This is going to be the hardest question I've ever been asked. it's like literally like, like trying to find like the one thing you like about your favorite thing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to look through the list now because this is daunting. I'm gonna go first record because I think it's a little bit better of a conversion. I'm gonna go. All right, if you like later Good Charlotte, like your Good Morning Revival, I'm gonna go Hard Out off the first record.
Yep. Okay.
And I'm gonna go The City if you're into earlier Good Charlotte.
I love it. Cool. So I'll put those both on the playlist. Awesome. Jesse, this has been fantastic.
It was so fun.
This has been so great. Where can people find you and all of your work on the internet?
So jessecannon.com.
Perfect.
Or I'm at Jesse Cannon, which makes life super easy.
Yeah.
My YouTube channel is youtube.com Musformation, or if you just write my name into YouTube, or you go to my website or anything, it's linked everywhere. And
Perfect.
killedbydesk.com is that new fun punk podcast I'm doing, and the trailer should be up by the time anybody hears this.
Awesome. Jesse, thank you so much for coming on the show. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Last week, we talked about The Click from the album Good Charlotte. Next week, we'll be talking about a song from The Chronicles of Life and Death. My name is Molly. I've been your host. You can follow Generation GC at Generation GC Pod, P-O-D, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also follow me, Molly, at M Hudelson, MHUDELSON, on Twitter and Instagram. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on Apple and leave a review, rate it, and share it with your friends. Thanks for tuning in.